Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews, and we are finally back on track this week. And by being back on track, that means we are once again talking about Crime Story, the show from 86 to 88, starring Dennis Farina and a host and a slew of other people that have either were famous, been famous, have passed away that were famous. We've got so many people that were involved in the show at some level or another. It's made by Michael Mann, the guy who gave us Miami Vice and movies like Collateral and Heat. And starring Dennis Farina, this is his role. This is the thing that made me fall in love with him back in the late 80s. I was only like 11 years old when this show came out, maybe even 10. And at 10 years old, I loved this show. And it stayed with me for so long that I am finally getting to talk about it here on YouTube. And I love it. I love talking about this show. And when I fell off track for a while, this one really, I didn't know how I was going to feel coming back to it. But once I watched this episode, I remembered exactly why I loved doing this. And let's just jump in. We're on episode 10 of season 1. It is called For Love or Money. And boy, do I have a lot to say about this show. Because, okay, first off, they didn't have the narration. They just jumped right into the episode. But this show's episode has a few really, really interesting people in it. Starting with this very first scene, right? Okay, right there. This guy who's just been held up. Look at, there's Gary Sinise. Gary Sinise from, and I'm not going to say the big one he's in, but he's been in everything. But I liked him in Of Mice and Men. He's in The Green Mile. He was in, yes, Forrest Gump as Lieutenant Dan, CSI, Imposter, a movie that nobody really liked or saw, but I saw it. Gary Sinise is a classically trained, Chicago-based, originally, actor. I think he was out of Steppenwolf. Gary Sinise is a fantastic actor. But also in that scene, we had Sandy Baird. Now, if you don't know who Sandy Baird is, he was famously Jack Clampus, I believe is the name, from Seinfeld. But he's been in a ton of stuff. He was a veteran character actor before he passed. He plays this guy getting robbed by the character of Paulie, who is dressed in drag. He calls himself, "Call me Granny." It's fucking bananas. It's one of the, it's ridiculous that this guy dressed up as a woman, and nowadays I don't know if people would get in a twist over it, but I thought it was really funny that this guy robs this jewelry salesman and holds him at gunpoint, puts him in the car, says, "Say goodbye to Granny," and leaves. And when he tells him that there's always going to be a gun on you before I leave, right? And when he goes behind the car, Gary Sinise comes up behind him and tells him, "Don't move, this was a robbery," and they get off with his jewels. And we find out that this is this whole scheme that's going on, robbing jewelry salesmen. So apparently back in the day, jewelry salesman was a thing. You'd have a trunk full of jewelry that you'd go door to door to sell, just like everything else, from dictionaries to vacuum cleaners. The days of the, salesmen like that, in that form, are pretty much over. I don't know if there's some places out in the rural BF nowhere, like out in Idaho or Nebraska or Montana. I don't know if that still happens out there. But that kind of business is long pretty much dead. And thinking about how there were guys going around with jewelry all over, no wonder these guys were getting ripped off. That's our big setup, is these guys are getting taken down by crews led by, we don't really know who they're being led by, but there's several guys involved, and Paulie is one of them. Paulie being Ray Luca's right-hand man. So wherever Paulie is, Ray can't be that. The thing is throughout most of this episode, Ray is nowhere to be found. Man, I'm sorry, this thing went black. So as far as the cops get introduced to this, we have David, Ambrose, played by Stephen Lang, the great Stephen Lang from Avatar and Don't Breathe. Um, he is there to bring Torello, played by Dennis Farina, his divorce papers. Again, his marriage completely fell apart. It was one of those TV kind of falling apart. They were good, and then all of a sudden they were headed for a divorce in like a couple of episodes. They did kind of a good job at setting up her irritation and her seeing Torello as this his career and his attitude, his age over Ray Luca, taking over their marriage. And so now that it's fallen apart, there's David Ambrose to hand him his divorce papers. That's what Stephen Lang gets to do in this episode, but it's okay. So to put his mind off of the divorce, his captain, played by Ron Dean, another veteran actor from Chicago, who's been was in Dark Knight and The Fugitive. He always plays a Chicago cop. He's there and it looks like he's never aged. I swear to God, he looks the same as he did back in 1986. Although I think this episode is finally in 87. So he tells him, we know these guys are getting robbed at these places. Why don't you go scope it out? Take your mind off the divorce. And so him and his guys set up this big elaborate sting, where one of them is pretending to be a blind guy with a police dog. Some of the guys are working on one of the L overhead areas, and Krychek and Torello in a car, all kind of scoping out the area. And I love this guy. The song that the blind guy's singing, or the cop pretending to be blind, is like, I'm blind, but I can see your mind. It's really bad. It's not good, but it's really funny. Sinise shows up, but they get made because they're not the only ones paying attention to what's going on here. So what happens is because his contact is played by another great character actor. His name is Richard Edson. In this, he's Jake. His name is Jake, and he is the guy from Ferris Bueller's Day Off who steals Cameron's car that Ferris stole from Cameron's dad. The guy who with the other gentlemen are playing, leaping the Ferrari to the Star Wars music. That's where I know him from, but he's also been in a ton of things. I believe he's a kind of a veteran actor of Jim Jarmusch movies. Very recognizable face. So their contact is Polly, and they smell the bad deal. They realize they've been made. The cops find out that they've been made, and so they say, follow the guy that you were just on, and we'll figure out everything else from there on. So they follow Gary and Richard Edson's character, and they're following a guy with jewelry in his trunk. So Sinise is in the diner, track the driver of the jewelry car with his newspaper. It's very obvious, but it's fine. Like, the guy robs it, but the cops are there waiting. They're just waiting for them to come out. And once they do, they all move in and force on Sinise and Edson's characters. But Edson tries to bolt. That's when they sick the police dog on him. And it's a pretty funny scene. This is a really weird episode, by the way. It gets really weird if it's not already weird enough. With jewelry salesmen and attack, police dogs and Gary Sinise and the guy from Seinfeld and the guy from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It gets weirder, trust me. And it's fantastic. So they become heroes in this town for busting up this jewelry, thing. The bust in this particular town is a big deal. And so the cops are given the keys to the city. And I was like going to myself, was that ever, what was that? What was getting the keys to the city ever really mean? And so I did a little looking up of getting the keys to a city meant. Now, back in the medieval times and in long, long past times, it actually meant something like that you wouldn't have to pay a toll to come. It means a little less now, a friend to the city, that you are a hero. But there were some actual functions to this. And what's interesting is, I believe there was a function to these keys as well. It was a little subtext. You had to kind of, it was said by one person, and you almost would miss it if you didn't understand. Because when they throw this party, well, before we get to that, that's basically what keys to the city meant. I honestly was like, wow, that really was a thing. People do get keys to the city. Oh, and the first time it happened was in New York in 1702, I believe. As far as modern day, what it means then, like you could come and go from a city. That was kind of what the whole meaning of it was back then. So we follow Sinise, and they have him in bad cop. This is a good cop, bad cop situation. Where Krychek, I just love saying Krychek, just because it reminds me of the X-Files character. They're playing good cop, bad cop on this guy. And this guy is just kind of a guy who got really down on his luck, lost his job. His wife has fucking polio, of all things. She's in a fucking iron lung. And they really show it. I mean, I haven't seen an iron lung on a show or a movie since The Big Lebowski. And so he needed money for a sick wife. He lost her job. She was sick. And he needs help. And he's like, I know what I did. I did this thing, but I need help. I can't tell you what you want to know because I know how things work. They will kill me if I tell you anything. And Sinise plays it brilliantly here. And you can see the actor, like his acting chops were fantastic. But 86, I mean, he was already, I think, an established character actor. But I don't know how many big roles he had gotten previously. Because think about it, Forrest Gump is only 7 years away from this. So, also this episode has some bad ADR. I don't usually complain about things like that, but there's just like a few scenes that you can just tell were obviously said and then dubbed over later. So we're getting to the part with why the key was important, because they throw this huge party for these guys. They're like, the mayor's there, everybody, this whole shindig, everybody's getting wasted too. Wasted. Like you're seeing a bunch of cops just getting wrecked. And the mayor comes up to them, and the mayor is also somebody that's becomes more of a bigger actor, and he's played by Tom Irwin. Tom Irwin I always think of as the dad on My So-Called Life. So he's actually the mayor in this. He's a veteran actor. He's been in, like, look him up. He's been in a shit ton of things. And he actually hands them physical keys to the city. Like, here you go. But he's like drunk. And so he's like, here you guys go. Here's some like keys to the city and shit. And so, Danny Krychek, all right, so this is how weird it gets. They're like pumping a keg. He's just foam. It's just pouring out of this beer. And Krychek, and because he's drunk, and he doesn't even know what he's really doing. And Krychek walks up, what are you doing? That's not how you tap a keg off a beer. And he yanks it from him, and he blows all over the foam off the beer. And the foam off the beer comes and hits the back of this lady who's like drunk as well, and just sprays her with all this foam. And then he's just like brushing it off her and blowing it off her, and she's all like ha 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 and everything. And the next thing you know, he's like kissing on her neck and kissing on her back, and it's just like, what the fuck is happening right now? And they get ready to go to an after party. So they all leave, walking down the road. They leave the bar that they're at. They take the girls with. Okay, there's like 2 girls that they bring with them to this after party bar. And at the after party bar, the black cop that's the part of the team, I forget his name right now, that's why I'm going to call him the African American cop, the one who was pretending to be a blind guy at the beginning of the episode, he walks up to this bar, and there's this lady there, and she's like, hey there, sugar, whatever, I'm whatever you want to be. I'm like, I can't remember her exact wording, but he goes, and he's drunk, and he's like, this is solicitation. Like, it's against the law. And she goes, you're the one, you're carrying the keys. I'm not a purchase. I'm a gift. So that leads me to believe that what the keys really meant was not carte blanche. Not like they could do whatever they wanted, but that because I have a feeling that I kind of got the vibe from this mayor that he was a partier and he liked to do whatever he wanted. And I think getting the keys to the city meant you could do things like sleep with, like, you could have prostitutes. Because she really says it like it's something that she's seen before. And so I think basically it was like, no, it's not solicitation if I'm just giving it to you. And you have the key, which meant I will sleep with you. It's fucking weird. You really have to like pay attention. I don't expect anybody to watch it, but I keep asking people. That's one of the main reasons why I'm doing these, is that so people find this show. I'm watching it on Vudu for free. I have to watch it with ads, unfortunately, but so that's what I think the actual keys meant. Something along, and amongst other things, I think. But then there's a huge bar fight that's started by this actor. It just says customer. But this actor's name, and I swear to God, this is why it just keeps getting weirder. This actor's name is Jinx Titanic. I am not making that up. I looked him up. His real name is Jinx, Jinx, like you're a Jinx, Titanic, like the fucking ship. And he starts a fight with one of Torello's guys, and it turns into a huge bar fight. And all of a sudden, there's little Billy Campbell. He's kicking ass like he's in the Rocketeer already, throwing guys and busting up chairs and tables and stuff. It's amazing. And they after the fight, they get kicked out of the bar. They take the girls. They get in the car. They're all drunk, all as a skunk. Only two of them don't get in the car because the rest of them are getting into a car to go drunk driving back to the hotel to bang the girls that they took with them. The thing that we don't know, and first off, a bunch of cops drunk driving. Yay. Like, oh, look at the hypocrisy there. But the African-American guy is so drunk, and he said it twice. But this is the second time, and this is his exact words as he's yelling at the guys as they drive away. This is the law that prevails all over the land. Like, what? So you find out later on that the local cops show up at their hotel in the morning to run them out of town. Not only for being in a bar fight, they were heroes the night before, got the keys to the city, but Krychek, the woman that Krychek was kissing on and sprayed the beer foam on and took her back to the hotel and banged her brains out, she was the mayor's wife. What is happening in this episode? Our guys went from being straight legit, MCU cops. That's what they call themselves, Major Crimes Unit. Got all serious there for a second. Get turned in my I know what I'm talking about voice. And to like a bunch of drunken hooligans who go to a town they've never been and sleep with the mayor's wife? This guy right here, that's Jinx Titanic. I swear to God, that's his real name. Maybe it's his stage name and he doesn't go by any other name, because usually they say in the byline, Jinx Titanic as blankety blank. So they get run out of town. Old Alex Krychek slept with the mayor's wife. It's unbelievable. So the robbers, we find out, so they get back into town after this. This is when all of a sudden it just gets back to being a serious business. The robbers, Howie and Jake, played by Richard Edson and Gary Sinise, they find out through the wives. All right, they go to the wife who's in the iron lung, and they get interviewed by the wife of Jake, and the wife that's in the iron lung is Gary Sinise's wife. They find out through them, Frank Coleman. Frank Coleman, if you've been paying attention to the reviews, is the associate of Ray Lucas, who's been on the run. He's the guy who who's played by the guy who played Buffalo Bill, Silence of the Lambs, and for some reason his damn name is escaping me, and I'm really mad at myself right now because I should know what that actor's name is right off the top of my head, and I can't do it. Now I'm going to pause it so I can remember it. It's Ted Levine. Ted fucking Levine. It's Frank Coleman that nobody has seen. Everybody's trying to find Frank Coleman because Frank knows a lot of shit about Ray Lucas stuff. So all of a sudden, this whole story goes and ties all the way back to Ray Lucas, who we haven't even seen in this except for Paulie. It's crazy. So Howie's wife's in an iron lung. They talk about how, the health and unemployment led to him committing crimes. And Krychek gets Howie a job. It's not a great job, but it's something that'll help them in the meantime. But you can just tell that Howie knows this isn't enough. I don't know what to do about, my wife. And he's asked to find out who Jake, his partner, is calling. They find out that there's a bunch of calls being made to somebody in, I believe, Ohio. And I got to pause it because the commercials are on. Okay, we're back. So, all right. So we find out that Ray and Polly are staking out Gary Sinise's character. And they bring him in. And it's dire. It looks really bad. Ray interrogating Howie. And through the whole time, Gary's just like, if you're going to kill me, somebody has to take care of my wife, all right? This is the only reason why I did it. And I would never tell on you guys, but somebody has to take care of my wife. And it was a really intense scene because here's the thing. This isn't like any normal show. Gary Sinise is not a regular character. And Ray Luca is a fucking maniac killer. And so there's a moment, there's a few moments here where you really think he's going to get killed. And I actually gave a shit. And they pan back and they show like Ray with the big silencer pistol, like trying to decide whether or not it like kind of lowers, and he's thinking about it, man, like thinking I'm gonna blow this guy's brains all over the wall. Then he backs off at the last second. I actually let out a sigh of like, whoa, and he lets him go. And probably because, he felt bad for the guy and that he could turn on him if he wants, but he didn't. He's not afraid to die. He just cares about his wife. And I think Ray, in the weird way, respects that and thinks that this guy wouldn't turn on us. He's got a sick wife at home. But this whole scene sets up Luca taking control of all the crews that run heists through Chicago. He goes to a jeweler who's been running all these guys. He's been the one taking all the money and getting all the cut of the money. And so he tells him, this is how it is. Nothing happens in this town now without my knowledge. So I'm taking a cut of the action, beats the shit out of the guy for good measure. And then right at that moment, a crew walks in and he tells them, if you want to work in this town, you got to go through me. You now work for me. I tell you what to steal and when not to steal. And if you don't like it, you can fuck off. Well, that's the thing. Then we have this other really weird scene where Torello and his guys are in another bar telling war stories about Korea, and it's really creepy because there's this girl that's all by herself and all these guys kind of surrounding her, and they're really pouring it on thick. I'm going to tell you my war story so we can go back and do it later. And all of a sudden it just takes this like jokey route where it's all, we're all just having fun, we're all just kidding around. And I'm like, okay, that was really weird, because then the whole creepy turns funny, turns tragic. Because you find out that Gary Sinise took another job. Despite having the job from Krychek, it wasn't enough for him. He felt he had to go out there and try to rob somebody else with another crew that didn't have permission from Luca. They all had said that. See, I doubt that Gary Sinise's how he even knew that at that point. I think he mixed up with the crew who was telling Luca basically to shove it. But they find out and they put him in the car. And the next thing you know is you see the cops going to this like foundry, this like kind of factory where there's like welding and stuff going on, and all these guys are dead. They've all been killed, and there's somebody hanging from the rafters, and it's Howie. It's Howie and Krychek and Torello go in there, and Torello's like, "Do we know any of these guys?" And Torello's like, "We know one of them," and he takes him over to Howie and sees there's Gary Sinise hanging from the rafters, dead, and Krychek really loses it, and he tells Frank, I should have, like back then and way back in the first episode, he's like, you had him dead to rights, and I stopped you from killing him, and I should have let you fucking kill him. He's like, why did you kill him? Why didn't I stop you? Why, like now this guy just keeps killing more and more people that are just innocent victims basically along the way, even though, he's not innocent. Howie was an innocent character, but he didn't deserve this, and, none of these guys do. But Frank tells Krychek that I am going to kill him one of these days. And that's basically it. And it's for love or money. He tried to help his wife, and it was the only way he thought he knew how to do it, and it cost him his life. And Ray Luca kills him anyway. He let him go, but he saw it as you turned on me, you went against me, you took a job without my permission, and now you got to die. And it's kind of how a lot of these episodes end up, and it's just, it's really well done, really well shot, really well acted, and while it's dated, and some of the scenes that they're trying to portray from the 60s are even more cheesy, done in the 80s, but it's still such a fantastic show, and has so many great actors involved that have, still around or passed. Bill Smitrovich, who plays Krychek, he's still kicking around. I mean, he was great on Millennium, and everybody knows him from Life Goes On. But fantastic episode. Can't wait for next week, where it's called Crime Pays. We'll be doing episode 11. I think that makes us halfway through season 1. Only halfway through. Holy shit. So anyway, that's For Love or Money. If you liked this review, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe. If you're not a subscriber, please become a subscriber. If you like this, what I'm saying about this show, please share this video. I love shares just as much as I like likes and subscribes. Hitting the bell for all notifications just lets you know when I'm putting up content, which is pretty much constantly. You can find me on Twitter at reviews_gun. Otherwise, this is Rob at Smirking Gun Reviews saying we'll be back next week for more crime story. Have a great night, and we will see you on the next video. Bye.